Testing. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, please do take your seats. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning to you. And thank you so much for joining us today. This is not my official welcome yet. As we begin this event, I'm going to ask us to turn our eyes to the screen for a short promo from the Nfvf. Thank you. Not deja vu.
We recorded that.
When stories are no longer told and retold, the culture fades and the people are forgotten. We are not shy about remembering out loud our story. The National Film and Video Foundation, as an agency of the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, was created to ensure the equitable growth of South Africa's film and video industry. Our vision is embedded in an inclusive, diverse, and sustainable audiovisual ecosystem that tells South African stories to local and global audiences. When stories are no longer told and retold, the culture fades and the people are forgotten. We are not shy about remembering out loud our story. The National Film and Video Foundation, as an agency of the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, was created to ensure the equitable growth of South Africa's film and video industry. Our vision is embedded in an inclusive, diverse, and sustainable audiovisual ecosystem that tells South African stories to local and global audiences. We are the custodian of South Africa's film and video industry, committed to ensuring its equitable growth. The Nfvf loves South African film and lets stories speak.
What are technical gremlins, if not the standard every now and again for every industry? Gentlemen, am I good to go? Okay, great. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to officially welcome you to the Research Industry Engagement, and this is undertaken by the National Film and Video Foundation. Now, as part of its strategic goals, annually the Nfvf engages in research initiatives, and the purpose of these research initiatives is to inform policy, but also to provide insight into the state of the film industry. And today we're going to be sharing highlights from a number of research initiatives that have been undertaken, and we're going to be sharing insights. We're going to be having a panel discussion with our esteemed guests, and you are also going to be a very big part of the event today because we want to hear from you. This is not just the Nfvf speaking to the industry. This is the Nfvf sharing its findings. We've also got the Independent Black Filmmakers Collective that's also going to be sharing some of their highlights from the Izimbali Wellness Program research that's been done. And we're also going to be chatting about issues of mental health and mental wellness in the creative sector and the creative industry. And of course, this is the 16 days of activism against no violence for women and children. So we're also going to be honing in on issues around gender-based violence, those that we experience from home, brought into work, and how it impacts us at work, but also, experiences that people have within the job industry, because we know that in the creative industries, there's a lot that is unspoken, that the creatives, face on a daily basis. And as a way of just introducing myself, I am a filmmaker myself. All right, don't see the face beat and the hair. No, on a daily basis, I'm dealing with crew, I'm dealing with production schedules, I'm dealing with shooting, I'm dealing with editing, post-production. That is my daily life as a creative. But at the same time, I also know the realities of working in the industry and how it impacts one's mental health. We work in a highly pressurized industry, and not just once or twice pressurized, consistently pressurized, day in, day out. The pressure to perform is real. Am I alone in this? You guys know the pressure to perform is real. Oh, that's my profile. I'm supposed to be using this clicker to go there. Thank you for reminding me. That is me, Kanyuma Kubane, so you can read about me and the work that I've done. Not only am I a filmmaker, but I'm also a businesswoman. I own a production company. I am also a political commentator. I lend my voice to all the big political stories happening because creatives have minds too. Political minds. We shape discourse. We shape what's cool, what's not cool, what people like, what they don't like. We actually are the people who influence the agenda as creatives, as people who are in the film and TV industry. We influence, the work that's being done in a lot of sectors. So you want to connect and tell people what's happening today, right? This is the password. You can just look for the Wi-Fi, the capital Connect, and the password is entitled Connect Me. And What is our hashtag? Do we have a hashtag that people can use today to tweet? That will be shared a little bit later on, but you can also
not
keep
shy
up with
about
the
remembering out
conversation
loud
on our social media
our
pages.
story.
All the NFvf social media
National Film
pages
and Video
will also be
Foundation
covering this
as an
event
agency
today.
of the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture.
Without wasting any time, ladies and
created to
gentlemen,
ensure
I'd
the
like to
equitable
start
growth
today's
of
proceedings
South Africa's
by
film
inviting
and
Ms.
video
Thobela
industry.
Mayinje, who's the acting CEO
Our
of the
vision
National Film
is
and
embedded
Video
in an
Foundation,
inclusive,
to give us
diverse,
an overview and
audiovisual
purpose of the day. Thank you.
tell South African stories to local and global audiences. We are the custodian of South Africa's film and video industry, committed to ensuring its equitable growth. The Nfvf loves South African
Good
film.
morning, everyone.
Let
My name is
stories
Thobela
speak.
Mayinje. I'm the acting CEO of the National Film and Video Foundation, known as the Nfvf. And we are an agency of the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, where we were created to
When
ensure
stories are no
equitable
longer
growth
told
of the
and
film and
retold,
video industry.
the
And we
culture
do
fades
this by providing funding
are
towards the
forgotten.
development,
We
production,
are not shy about
marketing,
remembering
and
out
distribution
loud
of films. And
our
we also
story.
spearhead
National
skills
Film
development
and Video
initiatives
Foundation
for the filmmakers.
as an agency of the
As
Department
part of our
Sport,
strategic
Arts
goals
and
at the
Culture,
Nfvf,
was created
we
to ensure the
undertake
equitable
research
growth
on an annual
of South
basis,
Africa's film
and this is
and
the
video
reason
industry.
that is bringing us together today.
Our vision
And the
is
Nfvf commissioned audience research to
diverse
better
and
understand
audiovisual
how South
industry.
African audiences
Tell
engage with
South
South
African
African
stories to
content.
local and global
And the
audiences.
aim to gain insight is
We
also
are the custodian
to
of
gain the
South Africa's
consumption
film
trends
and video
from
industry,
audiences.
committed
And
to
we do
ensuring its
this,
equitable growth.
with specific attention to South African produced content, to understand films such as underfeatured documentary animation projects, and to ensure that they circulate more widely within South Africa as well as abroad. And understanding the film viewing patterns of South African audiences and their socio-economic environment is key to the development of audiences who are the consumers of South African film content. We're also excited to formally launch this study today. And also today, we will also introduce the current research that the Nfvf is undertaking in partnership with Izimbali Wellness Program. We will also give you an insight of how the partnership came about and how it will also work to address mental health issues in the audiovisual and creative sector. We will also focus on the impact of gender-based violence and femicide on mental health in the context of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And let me take this opportunity to welcome you today and thank you for taking your time to join us for this important engagement. And we look forward to engaging with you throughout the day on this very important conversation. And to those who are joining us virtually, thank you very much. Please leave your comments or questions on the chat box, and the team that is here will attend to those throughout the day. And as it's customary for us, whenever we get an opportunity of being in these platforms, we need to encourage you to also make use of our Nfvf social media pages for all our funding opportunities. And you can do this through our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram pages at Nfvf SA. We also found on TikTok under Nfvf SA, which is _. You can also visit the Nfvf website for more information. Thank you so much.
Sustainable audiovisual ecosystem that tells South African stories to local and global audiences.
It's very rare that a CEO is so short. I had literally like about 20 or so minutes straight and short and to the point. Thank you so much, Sis Thobela. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take this time to just give you a short overview of how our day is going to run today. As mentioned, we are going to be having presentations that will be done, sharing with us highlights of different research initiatives that have been undertaken by the Nfvf, by the Izimbali Wellness Program. We are going to be having Ms. Onke Tumeko, who's the head of operations. She'll be coming and sharing the overview of the Nfvf's research and Nfvf Industry Engagements. We also have Ms. Butse Matlala, who is the Research and Compliance Manager, and she'll be sharing with us highlights of the audience research report findings. Later on, we'll also have Ms. Mandisa Zita as well as Ms. Ketiwe Ngobo from the Independent Black Filmmakers Collective, and they'll be sharing with us the Izimbali Wellness Program findings, and that's work that they've been undertaking into this very, very important issue of mental wellness and mental health within the creative industry. And later on, ladies and gentlemen, we will also be having a panel discussion with my guests, and we're going to be honing in on a number of issues that are coming out of the research that they're going to be highlighting. And I am hoping and I am pleading with you to take notes, because they're here because they want to engage. This is an engagement, and engagement is two-way. I'm hoping that we're going to have a robust engagement with all of you here today, who I believe are professionals in the industry in various capacities. And so we would love to engage you all today. Please do bring your questions, your comments, don't hold back. I think that's really what's going to make this session a fruitful one. And so without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome on stage Ms. Onke Dumeko, who is the Head of Operations at the Nfvf. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. And you've heard from the acting CEO, who welcomed everyone so nicely. Thank you again for joining us. I am going to attempt to use this clicker properly. Okay, so I'm just going to move this slightly. Hopefully I don't give you a show and fall over. Today I'm going to give you an overview of the research that we've done in the past at the Nfvf, which will then bring us into why we're here today, why we're having an industry engagement. Essentially, what we do as the Nfvf is we function according to four core funding pillars. So as an entity under the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture, we then fund across the value chain of filmmaking, from development all the way to marketing and distribution. Then we also provide skills development through the bursaries that we provide, and also the funding that we give to those who train others. Central to all of that, though, is the research that we do, right? Because you cannot know where you're going if you haven't really had a proper understanding of where you currently are, and if you've had enough time to operate in whatever industry that you've been operating in, how you've fared in the past. So that's why the research that we do is central to all of the funding that we provide. So research is generally one of the most underutilized things when it comes to decision making, right? Research obviously will provide the insights, and those insights are not generated for you to kind of just look at them once and glance over them and have them collect dust, but they're really there to create an opportunity for you to make informed decisions. So research then is supposed to really impact business decision making, but the reality is that it's one of the most underutilized forms of underutilized tools to make decisions. There was a study done by Seagate, a very renowned institution in the US. They did it in 2019, 2020, and they focused on basically the importance of data, the extent to which it's used or to which it's not used, right? With a respondent group of about 1,500 organizations, mid-sized organizations to larger scale organizations. So ultimately, the survey showed that more than 40% of organizations' data sits dormant. So we must also just remember that it's not just an arts or creative issue, that to a certain extent, research is not necessarily utilized to its full extent. It's really across the board. Luckily, it's 40%, right? And it's not over the 50% mark. But ultimately, you should have a situation where research is utilized to its full capacity. So in terms of the journey of research that we've undertaken as the Nfvf, the Nfvf was enacted in 1997. But as a newish entity, it took some time, obviously, to get things going. And the research work really started in 2000. So in that 9-year space, really the data was focused on current data, understanding the industry profile and just giving an overview of the industry in terms of some of the research that the Nfvf did and supported and commissioned rather. So the first one being the SA film industry profile from 2000 by PricewaterhouseCoopers. And the second one being the SA film industry, an overview of the industry in 2004 by the Human Sciences Research Council. Then between 2010 and 2014, you can see that there's quite a stark improvement in terms of how we honed in much more into research studies. So we had more retrospective data, for example, with your 10-year industry review of 2010, 2011, you had more audience profiling. So that's when we started doing the audience development research. There was research that we started that really focused on the importance of the sector in terms of the national agenda. So research that focused on the economic impact of the industry through the economic baseline study, and then skills development as well, but more on a macroeconomic level. So that skills development would look at graduate absorption. The graduate absorption study just looked at the extent to which your graduates in the industry, how well are they being capitalized once they graduated, how well are they being capitalized in the industry? Do you have a case where you have a whole lot of practitioners who get their degrees, certificates sitting at home, not being utilized on production sets at broadcasters? So that's what that study looked at. And then there was an investigation into the feasibility of establishing a national film school, where there was a research panel that was established for that study. And then that's also when we started with co-production reports, just to have a look at the impact of the co-productions that the Nfvf does. The Nfvf has 12 co-productions, 10 of which are underpinned by co-production treaties, such as the Netherlands one, the French co-production treaty, and 2 of which are co-productions with 2 African countries, Africa and Nigeria, with sister entities. So then those co-production reports were then created on an annual basis. And then that's also when we started producing the annual box office reports by looking at the performance of films at the box office. So in that 4-year period, the Nfvf really started to invest a lot more time and resources into research that was a lot more broader than what it had focused on before. Then from 2015 to 2019, we evolved the economic impact, the baseline study, and started producing the economic impact assessment report. And then we started doing repeated surveys. So we didn't have just new research reports. We would now have updated ones where you could compare the data from the previous research. So for example, you had the audience development research from 2014-15, which could be compared to the audience development research from 2010-11, which is great because you always want to see what the growth is or what the challenges are, what things in terms of audience development are really not moving. And then matters of gender participation started to reflect in the research, where there was our input into in terms of the South African country report, which looked at the SA women in film, the gender matters in the South African film industry from 2017-18, and then the skills audit as well, which then looked at skills development, but from a more micro level, looking at the actual skills that exist, what is the extent of them, and where are the growth areas in terms of the skills in the industry that are required. Then between 2020 and 2023, the transformation agenda came up with the transformation report that the Nfvf did, and also then the entity performance against its mandate. So the statistical report that the Nfvf does, which looks back on a 5-year basis in terms of how we're performing. And then in terms of the reports that were produced, then we had versions which were shorter, so capsized versions, to make sure that people who don't want to read 90 pages can just get the brief summary of the report in hopefully less than 10, so that they could get the gist of what the objectives are, what the outcomes are, what the challenges are, what the recommendations are of that report. So that was done for the transformation reports and also the economic impact assessment report with the bulletins. Then there was also the, again, there was the audience research study that was now done for the 3rd time, and the statistical report, I think, that I'd mentioned. So in terms of 2024 onwards, this is the first time we've done something like this, where we've brought industry together to have an understanding of what type of research they would want us to look into. Which research topics have we not yet focused on as an organization, so that in terms of crafting our plan for research topics going forward, it's done in a way that is partly informed by what the industry demands are. So it's not to say that we'll only do engagements. Obviously, there'll be research reports that will be done, but some of them will be informed by engagements such as this. So the importance of research is that it really enables you to remain mandate-centric. Our mandate as the Nfvf, as the acting CEO had mentioned, is for us to provide the equitable growth of the industry. And we do that through our mandate, which is in the Nfvf Act, and that's underpinned by all of the Nfvf strategic objectives. And if you look at the statistical report, that looks at the past 5 years where we have operated as an entity, it basically shows that we haven't fared too badly, in the sense that we've funded 80.8% Black individuals, 51.7% of those are female, and 86.1% of them are tier 2 and tier 3 filmmakers. So just that, in terms of the other kind of key things, being the fact that we've funded across all 9 provinces, in terms of our funding pillars. And while the bulk of the grants still remain in Gauteng, Western Cape, and KZN, which are your more service provinces, it's also partially reflective of the fact that a lot of people will move to these provinces, move to a Durban, a Cape Town, a Johannesburg for work, right? Because if they are working, even if they're filmmakers, they may be working in the TV industry, where a lot of those productions actually operate from those 3 cities and those 3 provinces. So there's many different reasons as to why that data point remains like that, but ultimately funding across all the pillars has occurred in all 9 provinces, which is a good thing. It's not necessarily as high as we'd want it in all of your underserviced provinces, but it's definitely an opportunity for us to grow as we analyze what the reasons for that are. So in terms of how we do that, it's not just something that is external for us. We also have to reflect what we want to see externally. So in the organization, for example, you have a female CEO and a council chairperson who's also a female. 73.5% of your staff is female. 80% of your manco is female. So in terms of the gender representation, it's definitely there internally. If you look at the youth impact, all of the internship programs that have been done throughout the years, in terms of making sure that young people are given an opportunity to really maximize makers in underserviced areas, where we make sure that we go around the country and tell people who we are and what we do and what we fund and how they can access the funding, whether it's for the films or whether it's for bursaries, all of those things, then all of the policy interventions as well that we do to make ourselves more relevant in the industry, all of those things then reflect what we want to see in the industry as well. So, but there's still some work that needs to be done, but ultimately it's important for us to have engagements like this, because one always needs to respect the importance of research. Werner von Braun, I might be pronouncing it incorrectly, once said, research is what I'm doing when I don't know what I'm doing. And Quentin Tarantino said, when people ask me if I went to film school, I tell them, no, I went to films. So that just indicates the impact of the content, especially if you think of things like documentaries, which serve as such a good learning tool for understanding our history, understanding important things that have happened unfolding in front of us. Documentaries really serve as a learning basis. If you want to look at the country retrospectively to look at what happened, you can look at a documentary that unfolds, you know, fees must fall. You look at a documentary that unfolds any of the challenges we've had in the country. Similarly for animation. Animation films are so critically important in this country because just at an educational level, basic education in elementary level, they can be used to educate children, right, who are at school going age. So there's so many different ways that I guess film and content can be positioned as a research tool. So I hope you enjoyed today, and I'm gonna hand over back to the facilitator who will introduce our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Onke, for that comprehensive presentation. And I think they're doing really great work just in terms of integrating underserviced provinces and also looking at your PDIs, the youth, people living with disabilities, the LGBTQI industry or sector, because I think that without intentional steps being taken, it just continues being talk shop and nothing ever gets done. But once you become intentional and you actually take those steps, you know, to ring fence some of these grant fundings, then we can start to see transformation in all the various sectors that you've mentioned. And so thank you for just giving us an overview of what the Nfvf has achieved. And it is a lot, you know, it's a lot once you look at it collectively and you see what's being done from the year 2000, 2009, all the way up to now. It definitely is a lot. And I can attest to just one part of it. Last year, I was part of Unsung Heroes. And I think the call out is still open this year. So if you haven't, you know, put in an application, please do. Nfvf may say it's closed. Well, I think it's still open. But I know that but I know that I was the only person from Gauteng that got funded. Everybody else was from different provinces. And we were able to actually have filmmakers coming from the Limpopo province, KZN, Free State, Eastern Cape. And it was wonderful when we all gathered in Sandton to have our Unsung Heroes workshops, because then you start to realize how privileged we are in Johannesburg, how privileged we are to be in this industry where there is a very big film industry. For other filmmakers coming from underserviced provinces, it's a big deal for them to be a part of this industry, because sometimes they feel so alone. They feel alone. They're working by themselves, and it's only when they gather in spaces like this that they realize that they're part of a bigger collective. So thank you very much to the Nfvf for that. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting any time, I'm going to ask our next speaker to prepare herself to come forward and do the next presentation. Ms. Butse Matlala is going to come forward, and she is the Research and Compliance Manager, and she'll be presenting to us the highlights of the audience research report findings that's just recently been completed by the Nfvf. Ms. Butse.
Good morning, everyone. Everyone here that's joining us, as well as our guests online. I have the pleasure today as the research manager of giving you a snapshot of the findings of our audience research study. If I can just take you through a table of contents. So for purposes of this presentation, I will be taking you through an introduction. I'll also take you through to the methodology that we embarked on when we conducted this research study. I will take you through the South African film consumer profile, general perceptions and attitudes towards South African film that our consumers have. I'll also give you a breakdown of the cost and price preference, as well as an industry trend on distribution and marketing channels. And finally, I will then conclude with recommendations. So by means of an introduction, I think our acting CEO as well as our head of operations have given an overview of what the reasons why we embarked on this study. It was very important for us to embark on this study with all the technological advances that have happened, particularly with the advancement of OTT or over-the-top media content services. It was important for us to try and understand how the consumer patterns have changed. As such, we appointed a research company through our procurement processes named Nfvf to commission this research study for us. It was conducted last year in 2022. So, as the Nfvf, we have commissioned the audience research study to better understand South African audiences that engage with the South African film industry. The objective of the study was to gain insights about audience consumption trends with a specific focus on local content or South African produced content. It was important to use that to our knowledge in order to help films, whether they are feature films, documentaries, or even animation projects, so that we can assist them to circulate more widely in South Africa and abroad. It was important for us to be in a position to support and develop the access of film in the industry and to make informed decisions as an organization with regards to our funding strategy. It was further important for us to gain an understanding of developments that are relevant to the consumption of the South African and the global video and film content. It was important for us to provide insights that will inform not only our strategy, but to ensure that the content that is consumed and that we fund is circulated as widely as possible. Additionally, it became paramount for us to understand the filming viewing patterns of South African audiences and their various socioeconomic environment, which is key to the development of audiences who are consumers within our industry. In terms of a methodology, we used a mixed methods methodology, which was predominantly more quantitative than it was qualitative. The study unearthed key insights with a comparative analysis derived from past drawn studies or literature in order to identify key trends that are emerging within South African audiences. Previous research reports or documents were then used as a benchmark with strategies developed to gather comparable analysis and an understanding of the behavioral patterns that are there within our industry. The objective overall was then to come up with a practical research report that not only provides insights into prevailing audiences, but also provides a predictive data which can be used by various stakeholders and decision makers in the South African value chain or ecosystem. In terms of our methodology was twofold. In terms of our surveys, we looked at an audience survey as well as an external audience survey. With regards to our audience survey, we undertook desktop research to gain an understanding of the existing research, the debates, and the current developments that are relevant to the consumption of the South African and global film and video content. From this in-depth research, survey questions were then formulated, designed, and they formed an array of topics, which among others included streaming trends in South Africa, the trends of streamings and the impact that it has on the film and television industry's consumption, as well as the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on consumer habits and preferences. 2,345 people or respondents were then surveyed and interviewed across all 9 provinces. The survey further collected data based on various variables that they have, such as their age, their gender, their race, their income levels, and their education levels. We also had external audiences that were surveyed. This included stakeholders within the South African cultural and creative industry, where we needed to understand the industry trends on distribution and marketing. The questions in the surveys were sought to then unearth the distributor and stakeholder opinions related to the state of the industry. We looked at the popular genres, the fastest growing platforms for viewers, and the demand for the South African film and video content compared to foreign content, amongst others. The report as such, when you do read it, it provides, or rather it presents the two data, and it's presented in a way that both surveys in all sections are looked at in a way that is interconnected. With all research studies or research reports, there are various limitations. With this particular research study, we did see or experience a lot of stakeholder fatigue with regards to interviews. Whilst we did reach the minimum number of 423 respondents with regards to our external stakeholder survey, we do believe that the target was not fully achieved, attributed to the general fatigue that is there, and notwithstanding just the various mitigation strategies that we put in place, including contacting them directly via telephone and email. The reasons for this research fatigue, which were given, is that a lot of the stakeholders believed that in the last few months, a lot of research had been done and there hadn't been any proper feedback, and that there was also a lack of intergovernmental collaboration where different departments, different government agencies all embark on their own research studies without necessarily collaborating. Moving on to our research sample, with regards to our audience survey, we sampled 2,345 respondents. These range from, and I'm sure you're looking at that thinking, 5-year-old, how do you interview a 5-year-old? What are they? What can they answer? Some of these surveys were sent to schools, were completed by parents who would know what some of their children generally consume. But it ranged from, we broke it down from 5 to 14 years, 15 to 19, 20 to 34, 30 to 49, and 50 to 64, with the majority of respondents being 30%, which were persons between the ages of 20 to 34. In terms of gender background, females came in at 52% in majority as our respondents, with males being 48%. In terms of race of our audience or our respondents, we have 81% who are Black or African. We also have white people, white South Africans coming in at 8%, and then the number, becoming low with regards to colored people at 9% and Indian people at 2%, Indian and Asian. Continuing with our research sample, this was a national study. We did that 2,345 respondents was across 9 provinces. In terms of the respondents and the feedback that we received, the 26% or most of the respondents were people in Gauteng, followed by people in KZN, and very close, the race rate being very close between the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape. With regards to education levels, we profiled people despite their levels of education, the most, 39%, being South African persons who have a matric or a national senior certificate. In terms of gross personal monthly income, we profiled all South Africans, being those that earn between 5,000 Rand and lower, and right up to persons that earn above 25,000 Rand. Noting that most of the respondents at 38% are South Africans that earn 5,000 Rand and lower. In terms of our findings with regards to the general perceptions and attitudes towards films, our respondents were then asked, how much are they willing to pay based on where they live. Do they live in the city? Do they live in a small town? Do they live in the rural area? We did find that 42% of the respondents said they would pay between 90 and 100 Rand to watch a standardized 3D, 4DX, or an IMAX cinema film a film at a cinema. A further 30% said they would pay between 110 and 129 Rand, while 15% said they would pay more than 129 Rand. With regards to preferred languages, audience choices and determinants, we can look from the graphs presented that apart from English, 60% of the respondents preferred isiZulu as a language of watching films, noting that isiZulu is considered a primary language in South Africa as a country, with Zulu-speaking people accounting for 22% of our population. Afrikaans, isiXhosa, Sepedi, Setswana, and Sesotho then followed in that particular order. We'll note that the least preferred language was Sitsonga, Shivenda, Siswati, and isiNdebele. However, 79% of the respondents did indicate that they would be willing to watch films with subtitles, this showing us that they are open to consuming films in languages other than the languages that they speak and that they understand. Rating of South African films in when you do a comparative analysis between the local and the international films, 17% of the respondents said that the visual and cinematography standard of South African films they believed was excellent. 36% said that it was good, while 2% believed that it was extremely bad. When it became to the inclusion of local content, language, culture, 23% of our respondents said local films were excellent in that area, while 31% said it was good and another 2% said it was very bad. Overall, 65% of respondents indicated that what was most likable about South African films was that they featured characters that they could relate to. This corresponds well with the data collected about preferred languages. The majority of respondents like films because of characters that they can relate to, shows that they like to watch films featuring characters who speak their language and understand their culture, making them familiar and easy to identify with. In terms of industry trends on distribution and marketing, the report offers an analysis of distribution and exhibition platforms for producers in South Africa. Surveys were conducted for film producers and other external stakeholders who indicated that the fastest growing film viewing platform in the country is internet streaming via video on demand services. As such, the report offers an analysis of the distribution and exhibition platforms for producers in South Africa. Surveys were conducted. It further provides an analysis of audience attitudes towards advertising and marketing, layering out the South African sector's most effective advertising, marketing, and promotional strategies to date. The report also shows the analysis of distribution and exhibition platforms for producers in South Africa. Among the distributors who responded to the survey, 92% considered internet streaming VOD services to be the fastest growing television platform in South Africa, in the South African viewing markets. 53% of the respondents indicated that the South African audiences were not enjoying value for money on SABC 1, 2, 3, ETV, and DSTV, while 47% felt that the 265 Rand TV annual license fee from the SABC was quite steep, that the standard was generally, the standard of content viewed was not up to scratch, which they described as being of not great quality with a lot of reruns and repeats. To conclude, recommendations from from the study that we can all take away from and try to implement and learn from. Distributors believe that the South African film is not adequately advertised globally and locally, which is stunting the growth of the industry. They believe that more needs to be done to take advantage of new media and technologies to create and expand awareness of South African films. Audiences believe that our storylines are not very strong. They believe that deeper research tools need to be used in order for us to assist behavioral patterns, to support structures, and to look at the underlying particular events. Findings also suggest that there is an insufficient supply of local content with regards to productions. And, this is a recommendation for us that we as an entity, as the Nfvf, we should look at investing in building a learning ecosystem that supports the development of local talent to promote innovation in the South African film industry. Lastly, distributors also believed that there should be more investment with regards to market research with new techniques such as human-centered design, which I think that distributors would know what that is, that it's used more often. The approach to employ an open dialogue and cooperation between business, between people in research and development and end users or consumers should include a willingness and an ability to change different products based on our findings. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a snapshot of our findings in the audience research study. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think you'll agree with me that a lot of work has been put into this research and such great insights coming out of there. I think another round of applause. Thank you very much to you, Butse. And on the back of that, I'm not going to waste any time. We have to keep the momentum going because I believe that these insights are critical to us as creatives. Without wasting any time, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to the stage Ms. Mandisa Zita and Ms. Ketiwe Ngobo, both from the Independent Black Filmmakers Collective, who will also be sharing with us insights from their research into the Izimbali Wellness Program. Thank you very much. Okay, put your... are you going to present together or one for the other? Click for you.
Yeah. Click for me. I can only do one click at a time. I'm going to be clicking here and then I'm going to be clicking here and then I'm just going to be confused. So I just want to click once. Hello, everybody. It's really good to see people coming out to talk about research. I think that that's something that we don't do nearly enough. We don't nearly interrogate ourselves enough. And we're really, really privileged to be here to talk about something that we've become very, very passionate about. Monday and oh, you see? Yeah. Distracted. We've become really, really passionate about mental health. 2 years ago, in January, Patrick Shy, I just turned on the television, Patrick Shy had taken his own life. And I was like, God, how did Patrick, I know, you go through all these things about who Patrick is and what had happened to Patrick. So he's still front page news. I talked to a friend of a young woman who worked with me very closely. And we just finished doing some shooting in September. And so I called her on a Tuesday and I said, yeah, we've got this project. And it was like 5 minutes and it was quick in and out. And I'm just like, I didn't pay any attention to her. The next day, I found out that she'd taken her life. And I was devastated because She was young, she was bright, she was a leader, she was dynamic, she wasn't just into film, she was into art, she was into this, she was fashionable, she was just everything. Everything you want a young person to be. She was on top of herself and on top of her game. So for her to take her life, it shocked me. It shocked me into we have to start to pay attention. Not 4 weeks later, Ricky Rick had taken his life. And the year continued like that. Do you remember 2022? Yeah. It was just week after week after week. So I don't think those numbers and statistics have quelled and have gone down. It's just that we have become used to them. Okay, and I think that what's happening is we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention. And I don't think it's just young people, but I think particularly young people, because when you're mentally ill and you're like me, we're nearly at the end of our lives. You know what I mean? We're going. So that is a different matter. But when you are young and you have everything to live for, and there's a challenge which you need to get through, but you can't, we need to find ways of helping, of providing places for you to go, places for you to get answers. You know, when we make television shows, we are actually making things that give us answers to the questions we have in our lives. Okay, but when we talk about mental health, we tend to hide it. If you understand, when you hear in the news somebody passed away and it's sudden, I'm sorry to say this, but rest assured there was a suicide. Okay, rest assured that the family can't talk about it because we have stigmatized it. So I want us to really think about how we can pay attention to this. I was in Europe just a couple of weeks ago, and at a festival there, they were talking about mental health. I was online in February, they're talking about mental health. Mental health is not just happening in South Africa. It's something that's happening to the world, and we have to begin to pay attention to it. It's no longer a stigma. It's something that we have to talk about and have to deal with. So I'm really, really pleased to be here to start the conversation in a dynamic way. We have already started the conversation because we've been asking for people to support us, and we're finally beginning to gain momentum around mental health and having the conversations about it. But we've been having conversations at every festival since 2022 in South Africa, and we have a discussion and some kind of engagement around mental health at all these festivals. I want people to start to pay attention and start coming. I'm going to jump off. I'll be back. But Mandisa's going to come on and talk about more about it. Yeah.
Thank you, Ketiwe. So my name is Mandisa Zita, and there I am. I'm actually now a former board member. I'm still transitioning. But I also wear another hat where I'm the festival director of the Encounters Documentary Festival. It's really been a privilege to work with Ketiwe on this program. When she first approached us as a member of the IBFC, I just thought it was just a period of outrage that would pass. And it would happen, it would be on the news, and we'd all move on and COVID would be over. And mind you, this was like in the middle of the pandemic. But I think Ketiwe was very insistent that we all have the capability to actually take action. Can you just, it's right to the top slide. Which one? After this, yeah.
Okay,
This is the first one, yeah.
this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Ketwe was extremely insistent that this is something that we have to do something about. So as a result of my platform sitting on the board, I felt that I did have a platform to actually help initiate something. And we didn't wait on funding. We just decided that the least we could do is at least talk about it. And so that's how we started the program right in the middle of the pandemic. Can you go, yeah, to the 16 days of activism slide? Back, yeah, 16 days of activism. Yeah, thank you. So, as you know, we are in this period of 16 days of activism, and this has actually got a direct bearing on the mental health crisis in our industry. You know, we have to understand what's going on in the domestic and professional environment that is affecting the mental health crisis. We know that there's a huge number of factors that play into gender-based violence, including economic conditions of people in the industry, relationship problems, issues that maybe in other industries there's resources to intervene in these issues. And because of the nature of our industry, whatever is happening in the domestic and the professional environment is exacerbated, and it creates this growing mental health crisis. So in fact, we are at the coalface of the mental health crisis because of the way we operate. We operate as freelancers. We operate with intermittent finances. We struggle to get home loans. We don't have medical aids. We don't have support when we have relationship issues at home. I've worked in the corporate industry, and you do have resources when you have issues at home. You have access to wellness programs. So I think the socioeconomic conditions of our industry really, really make us vulnerable to mental health issues. Our hope, as the Izimbali program that we initiated with the IBFC, is that through our efforts, we will be able to at least make some kind of positive impact in our industry and as a result in our country. So I am a member of the IBFC, which is the Independent Black Filmmakers Collective, which is a network of like-minded Black practitioners in the industry, working to impact the value chain through transformation. And by so doing, we engage government a lot and stakeholders. We are a small organization, but we are a growing organization with huge impact in the industry. So I want to talk about what we've done a little bit, and then Ketwe will come in to speak about the research aspect. As part of my role as the communications committee lead of the IBFC, we developed a proposal and we started approaching key government stakeholders around our idea for intervening with the mental health crisis in the industry based on what we were seeing in the media. And I think some of the stakeholders here can tell you that Ketwe was harassing them wherever she saw them, cornering them and talking to them about this issue. And we're grateful that she did do that. Our main aim was, obviously, we recognize that there's a specific need for the context of the audiovisual creative sector. And we need to fill that gap. And so we developed a proposal with like a multifaceted program, initially to raise awareness, meaning let's remove the stigma, and to talk about related issues around gender-based violence, and to at least offer some solutions and some interventions for the industry at whatever level that we think we can. So currently, the IBFC has received support from the Gauteng Film Commission to run a pilot program based on this proposal, and we'll be launching it early next year, maybe as early as January. And we hope that from that pilot program, we will be able to use some of the data to initiate the research program that will form part of the phase 2 of the research around mental health in the sector. So we're looking forward to that. We've now finished the process of securing a service provider, and I'll explain more of what the service will entail. And basically, it's a free service, so we will be inviting the whole industry to partake in this pilot program. So we also approached the National Film and Video Foundation to support the program, and we were very pleased at our commitment to not only augmenting the resources for the pilot program, but also to conduct extensive research focused on mental health issues in the audiovisual creative industries and entertainment sector. So we're really looking forward to seeing the outcome of that, and we're very excited that at least we have the stepping stone towards this issue. So lifting the stigma. So while we were busy hustling and asking around for resources to initiate the pilot program, we decided that there's nothing stopping us from starting to talk about it and creating an awareness campaign around this issue. So we took it on the road, and we went to Durban, Cape Town, Johannesburg, and online during the COVID period, hosting events at various film festivals and film platforms through panel discussions and conversations with wellness experts and African spiritualists, survivors of mental health issues and gender-based violence, and survivors of addictions. And we just started talking about it at festivals, and we were grateful, and we were quite intrigued that it's just difficult to talk about it, that people don't have the platform to even just talk about it. The campaign did manage to raise awareness, and we've now moved on to the next phase of the campaign. But just to note that some of the speakers that we had during those panel discussions and seminars include Dr. Seshni Mudlia, who's a psychiatrist, Dr. Mabatu Mutsei, who's an African health spiritualist, Motlatsi Mafatsi, who's a well-known actor and musician. And we also recently had the participation of Dr. Jerry Mufokeng Wamaketa, who was also in one of our panels, as well as Ellen Sweden and Senzekile Shongwa of Panda and Sihofan Nikerek. So some of our proposed solutions and interventions. Okay, we don't have that slide, Kanye, it's fine, we edited last, I'll just speak to that. So initially, when we had this broad, big thinking idea, we obviously wanted to create the awareness program. We wanted to create an industry overview of the situation. And I truly believe that the research that the Nfvf will conduct in this area will lift the lid on that. We also wanted to establish a multi-sectorial entertainment industry wellness desk. So that is like our big thinking wish list. We wanted to provide mechanisms for professional support through therapy, substance abuse, debt counseling, relationship counseling, all the usual standard resources that you would get in a wellness program. We also want to engage global best practices and international experts on what has been the case studies in other audiovisual industries abroad, and just to learn from that. We definitely wanted an entertainment industry wellness hotline that people can access 24 hours for free. And we wanted a wellness toolkit that you can access off your phone or wherever to get help and resources and support. So those are some of our initial big thinking around this. And we're very pleased that now we can pilot the program to provide some of these resources. So in partnership with the Gauteng Film Commission, who ring-fenced some funding for this pilot program, we will be reaching the objectives of obviously raising awareness. So there'll be masterclasses and webinars. There'll be training for managers. We've had industry come to us and say, well, I'm a manager, and people often come to me, I don't have the skills. So it's like train the trainer kind of programs with other interventions like hotlines, resources, and we'll be able to provide that digitally and nationally. And our target is 200 practitioners. And we really like to invite the industry to partake in this pilot program so that our stakeholders can support us in providing more sustainable resources for us as an industry. And we are extremely grateful that the Nfvf is able to augment resources towards the pilot program as well, as that is critical to its success. So as I've said, the Izimbali services of this pilot program, next slide, please, Kanye. The 24-hour virtual hotline, digital campaigns, focus groups, which will help with the research aspect as well. Life skills training, awareness materials. So that will be some of the services we'll be able to provide in the next 3 months. In terms of research, a research approach, I've spoken to that already. We'll be able to collate some global best practices, which K2O will speak to, and the service provider will be able to provide some data from the 200 practitioners that have taken up the resources of the pilot program and help make key recommendations on these key activities for future planning on the planned research that will take place. And we are very pleased and excited that the Nfvf will partner and will actually initiate the research project based on the findings of the pilot program. So the research is important because it will provide critical information as to actually what are the entry points, what are the key areas that we need to intervene the most, and what is the unique context of our industry and how can we get support. So I'm going to call K2O now to speak on research.
So we have, so we've been looking around the world to see what's happening, who's doing what, and how are they doing, what are the results that they're getting, and what are the findings. So, so the first place we looked was at Looking Glass, and they talked about how 90% of people in the entertainment industry have had issues with mental health. Now, I was surprised that 65% of the general population have issues with mental health, but we are a huge number above them. We are 25% above the general population. So I'm concerned that they're 65% in the general population, because I thought the figure was much less. But now for 90% of us in the industry to be suffering from mental health means there is a real issue. Now, are we talking about it? No. Are we holding it in? Is the pain getting worse? Is it affecting us more? Yes. So we need to begin to talk about it and find places to go. And what was more shocking was, of that 90%, 55% of them said they had considered suicide. Considered suicide. 55%. So this half of the room, they've considered suicide. They've considered taking their lives and ending them. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. So we need to do something about that, because, when you have ideation around suicide leads to suicide. And then there was another study, which is called Behind the Scenes. And this is a UK study, another UK study. And this study talked about that 78% of a sample of 3,500 people. So I'm not understanding my own thing. Wait 1 second, please. Let me just understand it. Yeah, 78% said they were fatigued. They were exhausted. We wake up in the morning, We have to find something to do so that we can earn food, money to pay for food, for school fees, for this, for this, for this, for this, all these things. And we go to bed after 3 o'clock in the morning because we're still trying to make ends meet. If we're working from home, if we're on set, we're up at 4 and we get home at 8. So we have extraordinary working circumstances, and we don't take that into account, that that has an impact on our mental health. To work that, most people, I was there at 9 and I had to go home at 5. I mean, that's 8 hours. We're working 12, 14, 16, 18 hours a day. Right? And if you're on a crew and you're moving from job to job, that's 360. Okay, you might take a couple of weeks off here and there, but it's a lot of time, and you are exhausted from the base of your, it's from I don't know where, from everywhere. You know, I'm exhausted working from home because there's never really a time when I don't have to deliver. We did this presentation this morning because we were working yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before that. Okay, we did not have time to fit this in. So the kind of work and pressure that we all work under is extraordinary. And because if you're a freelancer and you're a kind of like a work from home writer, you're doing a little bit of this, 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 and not enough of it is making sense financially. Okay, so that's 78% of 350,000. That's a huge sample, right? 78%. So that means the majority of us are exhausted and fatigued. And then 91% of us, so this half of this table, oh, maybe it's just those two, don't have anxiety and depression, have gone through anxiety and depression. Okay, so that is a huge number of us, right? Everybody thinks, it's just me. Why can't I do that? It's me. What's wrong with me? I can't understand what's wrong with me. Why can't I? So-and-so's doing so well. So-and-so. And we're always comparing ourselves with other people. But actually, it's all of us. It's all of us. We're all in the same situation. Okay? We have to understand it is not just me. And then depression. I mean, depression is one of those things that my mother used to say, you're not depressed. You're just telling yourself you're depressed. There is really depression. There is really depression. And if 82% of us are depressed, that's not good. So we've got statistics that are showing us that the circumstances that we're living in are not right. The documentary industry is, I think, one of the most crisis-driven, because most of the time when they're documenting, they're going out into the field. They're not documenting somebody who was dancing last night. They're documenting about crises. They're in there. They're in there with the protagonists, and they're filming them. And, you know, if you're really making a great documentary, you're not filming like 2 days. You're filming over time. Over time, you're watching somebody's life deteriorate, right? So that has an impact on your mental health as you watch somebody who you're filming. And in a sense, as a documentarian, you're not supposed to intervene. You're not supposed, you are there to observe. So if that's happening and you're watching, that has an impact. And if you're doing that day after day, documenting this one, and then you might, because of our limited resources, we can't just make one documentary at a time. We have to make 3 or 4. It becomes very, very difficult. So the burnout is particularly great. So there's an organization in the UK and in Canada and in the US, which is called Documentality. And they're really making huge strides. They're doing a lot of research. They're doing a lot of surveys. And the main thing that they have really started to do is to do anecdotal research, because I think that's something that we tend to overlook. So-and-so said this, so-and-so said that. But that's really what's happening on the ground. So this anecdotal research, they did 21 focus groups around anecdotal research and got lots of information. And people talked about post-traumatic syndrome distress, PSSDD. You know, I don't even know how to say it. Anyway, and then there was, so this was toxic. The toxic dynamics, burnout, there was financial issues, there was people trying to juggle their work life with their family life, and also there was systemic racism within the industry. So this is what was happening in England. Sounds like the things that are happening here. Okay, so I don't think we're far away from everything. And then there was a charity called Film and TV, which really looked at people behind the scenes and started to work with them to help them organize their finances, because we're freelance workers. So we have this job now, and then we don't have the next job. We don't have the next job, and we don't have one planned in 3 months' time. We're just here. So you're constantly in this place where you don't know where your money's going to come from and how you're going to get it. So they created a budget planner, a savings calculator, 24-hour helpline, which was a mental health support helpline. And then they also created a stopgap grant. Now, don't we all need that? Sometimes when you just can't make it happen. You just can't make that money happen. It doesn't come through. You need something. I think they had one in Germany. They've got one in France. There's one being created in Ireland. Understanding that the creative sector is a sector that needs that. We're not going to be in full-time work. And now this whole thing where everything, I mean, even the people who think they're in full-time work will have their jobs cut soon. So everybody's going to be in this situation where we're not going to be able to we don't have that monthly income coming in. So these stopgap grants are really doing something for the creative sector. And we need to start thinking about them and pressurizing government around funding us when we're not working, because we do contribute so much to society, even though people think we're just artists. We're actually much more than that. And then in Australia, they did a 2-phase program, which was around the performing arts. And they interviewed roadies, artists, and 25% had considered suicide. But none of the roadies had ever sought help. So that means the men, let's be clear, the men don't think they need help. The men don't think that they can be vulnerable enough to go and look for help. They are, because they're human. They are because they're vulnerable. They are because it's okay. It's okay not to be okay. Okay, so we need to understand all those things. I think I have to speed up a little bit. And then there was they're going to do some quantitative research with 2,904. I didn't want to be like so much. 2,904 respondents. And that meant they had 30,000 years experience, the survey found that the levels of anxiety were 10 times higher than the general population. So I'm anxious because my shoes are not the same color as my dress. I'm anxious because I can't pay the bills. I can't pay the water bills. I can't pay the school fees. I don't know where the food's going to come from. I don't know what's going to happen to me. Am I going to be homeless or not? Okay, that's what I'm anxious about. So our anxiety levels are much, much higher. The levels of depression are 5 times higher in our sector. So you can see that this isn't just us saying that we have a little bit of a problem. These are real fundamental problems which are not as prevalent in the general population. So we need to take care of ourselves as creative workers, as artists, and as people who provide the biggest service. And as we move into the 21st and 22nd centuries, entertainment is going to be the bedrock of society. We are going to be the drivers of it. So we have to look after ourselves. I hope it will be because we're in full employment. We in South Africa are not in full employment at the moment. We don't have enough people who are working every day. You know, we have fewer people working every day. So we hope we'll be in that situation where we'll be in full employment and our stress will be because we're overworked rather than overworked, underpaid, and ignored by society. And then there was the cost of docs. I've actually got a little pamphlet about it. I want to give it to the Nfvf. Right? Guys, we must give it to them because they have to start to drive the change in the broadcasters, in the funding environment, and in everything. Because if we don't look after what it costs, and we look at what the drivers of cost are, right? So, oh God, I got a production. Yeah. And then when you start to work on the production, you start to work on how much it costs you to really deliver that thing. And you think, I don't think I'm going to be able to pay the bills because if I don't make this project work, I'm not going to get another project. And that means, so I'm just going to put all the money in and make this project work. And I'm still not going to have enough food for my family and all of those things. So the cost of projects has to be really looked at. Since I was at the SABC in 2006, and we changed the cost of productions. It went up for the first time in many years. Since then, in the terrestrial broadcast landscape, costs haven't gone up. 2006, I know that my buck went much further. So we are still making content the most cost intense process, and we're still making it at those prices. What are we cutting out? What are we doing to make us deliver? And then the broadcasters want, no, that's not good enough quality. I don't know. It's not really great. So now we're spending more time, putting more resources into something that we're not even sure we're going to get recommissioned for. Okay, so we need to really analyze the cost. This is the cost of docs, but I want us to really look at the cost of production totally. What's really funny is, as I talk about cost, everybody's eyes start to dart around and think, oh my God, is she really going to say something about Nfvf? Is she really going to say something about broadcasters? We have to start speaking the truth. We have to start speaking the truth and not being afraid to say, actually, let me walk away from this because what you're offering me is not possible. I would rather go and put along a co-production together so that I can get more resources. But what you offer is not realistic, you know? So I think we need to really start to look at the cost of production. And they've done this survey for 6 years at the Wickers, and only 11% estimate that in their last production, they were fully paid. Only 11%. Okay, so if I say my full payment per week is R1 million, I'm not going to be, but I don't think that's what people are saying. I think they're actually being realistic about what the rates are and do I get paid. And often, especially if you're working documentary and it's over a long period of time, I did that shoot for free, I'm doing that for free. Oh, I'm going to shoot that over Christmas, I'm going to shoot this, and you're not being paid. Okay, so sorry, funders, I must rush. Funders are more demanding than they were. In 2019, only 1% of funders demanded full or partial participation in ownership of rights. In 2023, that's 4 years later, it's risen 29%. I can't even work that out. You know, when you say it's 2%, it's 100% increase. I don't know what kind of increase that is, but that's astronomical in terms of our rights being taken away, because that's how we're going to fund our little pensions and so on. So there's a huge emotional toll on us as practitioners in so many different ways. We haven't even talked about what happens in the family, what happens when you go home, what happens with the arguments, what happens with your children, what's happening in all of these aspects that's putting pressure on you. I'm coming. This is the last slide, guys. It's the last slide. So, and then on set, we're also dealing with real difficulties, right? We're dealing with the difficulties that the material we deal with is not easy material to deal with. So someone like Ava DuVernay had a process where they had crisis counselors on set with them because the material was so hard to deal with, not just for the crew, but for the actors. It was for everybody, because communally we're dealing with things. Sometimes, you know, there's sometimes incidences where people are in a scene and they're dealing with, because we live in a violent society. So when we reflect our society, the scenes are violent, the scenes are hard, the scenes are difficult. And we're just going to, no, we're actually imbibing all of those things. So they had counselors on set. We need to do research in, so we agree with Nfvf, and we're really thankful to the Nfvf for supporting this endeavor. And I think if we can really get the statistics out and the figures out about what's really going on and have them South African centric rather than talking about Australia, Canada, all of these other places, we're going to be really begin to change the dynamic of what's happening in the entertainment industry and change how it works, and that it starts to work for practitioners as well as for larger society. So thank you very much.
Sometimes as the facilitator, you have to be the bad cop. As much as I would have loved to let you continue, but thank you so much. I think that for me, what really stood out in these slides that were shared was the fact that our levels of anxiety, our levels of depression in the creative industry is significantly higher than those of the local communities. And like you say, it's not just a myth, it's real. Creatives in the world, and specifically in South Africa, are in trouble, and we need interventions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much to Izimbali Wellness for that very comprehensive presentation. Thank you. We're going to set up for our panel discussion. We're going to take a 2 to 3 minute comfort break while we set up for all our panelists to come forward. So if you do want to go to the bathroom quickly and come back, now is your opportunity while we set up for the panel discussion. Thank you.
1, 2, 3. And then keep it paired. I can see Kata 20 ladies. Kung kata yehlisa ngoba ngifuna ukuya just music. Ngoba ngithi news.
No, angeke. Yeah, I'm just gonna walk around. Ladies and gentlemen, are we all back? We're going to start our discussion. My apologies, there isn't a panel discussion, but we are all the panelists as we sit here today. We've had a very long, fruitful morning of presentations. A lot has been shared with us, and now it's time for us to speak. All right? So usually, obviously, I wait for people to lift their hands up and we take rounds of questions. But this time there are no people who are going to be answering the questions. I'm going to be probing and I'm going to be asking the questions, and I'm going to be hearing from you. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to open the floor for reflections. You've listened, you've heard the speakers, you've seen the research, you've seen the figures, and I'm sure that there's something that really struck a chord with you. If there's somebody who would like to share their initial reflections with us, please show by hands. Who's the first one? Before I start choosing, ne? Ngamalala, Sizwe Zuma. Noxie, that lady over there is going to be sharing with our handheld mic. So she'll be sharing with us the stage. Go ahead, Sizwe. Introduce yourself to everybody.
1, 2, 1, 2. Hello, everyone. My name is Sizwe Fortune Zuma. I'm a writer, mostly in the industry, and a performer. We actually have been discussing some of the things on this table here regarding what Ketiwe and the team were discussing, you know, in terms of like the mental health as well as where we are as an industry in this country. I think the biggest challenge that we have, and it's something that's, you know, that's an overarching theme in what we're discussing here, is the fact that we're not united as an industry. You know, like right now we're discussing, like I think about 2 years ago, we've been having the whole notion of this amendment bill, the copyright bill, right? And you know, there were different panels, different organizations, and we're all speaking with different voices and whatnot. And that's why the government is not even taking us seriously, you know. I think as an industry, we need to come to a point where we just speak with one voice so that we can be able to change some of these things. You know, the whole mental health thing, it's really great, you know, for us to start to discuss it, and it needs to begin somewhere. But it's really, really hard in the industry because right now, first and foremost, the rates are being reduced on every level, and the turnaround times of delivery are also being reduced, because when I started many years ago, they would give you at least 7 days to write a script of 30 minutes and 2 weeks to write a script of a 48-minute drama series. But right now, they expect a script, they give it to you today,
In 3
and
days.
then within 2 days, you you have to deliver. And
Yeah.
sometimes even, I've even literally been contacted by a head writer and said, by 6 o'clock, I need another draft. And you're like, Haibo, you don't even know where I was,
Yeah.
during that night and whatnot. So it's really, really difficult, because also channels are adding pressure and whatnot. So I believe that we need to unite as an industry
Yes.
in order for us to be able to design a framework that's going to work for all of us.
And just to pick up on what Sizwe is saying, he's picking up on working conditions of professionals in the industry, because like you say, the rates are going down, but the pressure is going up. And that is a breeding ground for mental health issues. Now, I think I was sharing with the ladies before the program started that I have developed an anxiety, I don't know what you call it, but I'm anxious. The specific things that I have to do every week. I'm a storyliner, and I attend a story room every week, and I attend on a Tuesday, Monday night. And it took me a while to understand, why am I always sick on a Monday evening? Like my stomach is sore, my heart rate is up, I've got a headache, I'm not myself. And for a number of weeks, I couldn't put it together. Why do I feel like this at this particular time of the week and on this day? And then it dawned on me, it's because Tuesday, I'm walking into a hostile environment. I'm walking into a hostile environment. I'm walking into an environment where we are spoken down to, not at, where you produce work, it's trashed, and you have to start again, but the deadline stays the same. And those are my daily, weekly experiences. And I've now developed an anxiety disorder, which I didn't have in January. But it's December. I probably are going to need medication down the road. And how many Kanyes are there who are not even at the space of reflecting and connecting the dots? Why am I always sick? Why am I always stressed? It's because of the work that we're doing. And so, Caesar, what you're touching on is very important. And it leads me to my next question of, where are the platforms of regulation in our industry? Where are the platforms of regulations? Do we have producers in this house? Maloisi, you're a producer. You're a producer. I'm going to put you on the spot. Nox, if you can come this side, and I'm going to ask you, you're a producer. You have your own set of pressures. You have channel that's on your back. You have a TX. You know that you have to go on air at a particular date. This Sizwe, he's a writer. He's not meeting your deadlines. So you have to accelerate his working conditions. You don't care about his mental health. You care about the deadline. So how does it start with us producers to start working in a way that starts to change the system? Moloisi, please introduce yourself. I'm putting you on the spot, but this is what this session is for.
Proper goals. Okay. Hi,
Yes, because we are
everybody.
producers, and producers are the bosses of production.
We're the ones creating problems. Hi, everybody. My name is Moloisi Mavira.
And you're not the bad cop.
So, many, many years ago when we started in the industry, it was beautiful. There was professionalism, there was respect, budgets were good, timelines were realistic. And yes, I know before I came here, we were just asking a head writer to quickly see if they can deliver a script in 2 days. The issue is, and I'm looking at you, Zanele, now. No, I'll tell you why. No, I'm not putting you on the spot. And I have never tried to be a member of SWIFT I keep postponing, right? So you have bodies like SWIFT that we should all be a part of. We have your organization where you're talking mental health and that we should all be a part of because it affects all of us. I think the way to win this battle is for us to join the existing bodies that are fighting to get what we're talking about now right. But the fact that we're not you read about it and you carry on. It's not helping. They're going to have 50 members, they're going to have 2 members, they're trying to fix the problems we're talking about, but we're not joining those. So it's our fault, first of all. I don't see this changing. Okay, that you have your Netflixes and your streamers that are changing the game. I was in interviews yesterday, interviewing crew, and the rates, rates are improving. It's amazing. We have a problem. We're going into telenovelas. We can't afford these people for the first time because the streamers have come in and they're doing an amazing job with fixing rates and. But so we'll get there, right? For as long as we have the other, okay, we'll get there. The streamers will fix it. We'll get to a point where I think we're forced to pay the right rates. But to all of us in the room, let's join the existing organizations and there'll be change.
Is this how you are saying as a producer, you are saying, this is my intervention? What happens in your house? How do you change it in your house?
But that's what I'm saying. The first thing is for all of us to join this, the people that are sitting here presenting, saying, this is how we're helping you with mental health. This is how we're helping you with what Swift is doing. If we don't join them, then it doesn't help. We're all going to be sitting around here complaining about the same things and saying nobody's helping. I mean, Nfvf is supporting these bodies.
Absolutely.
But the very same people they're trying to support, we're not enrolling, we're not joining. So we're not going anywhere. Does that help?
Let's take it a notch up. No, I'm done. Thank you so much, Meloisi. Thank you. You're off the spot. Let's take it a notch up. Would unionizing in the industry be feasible given how people feel about speaking up, about being blacklisted, about seeing as being a troublemaker? If you talk too much, you don't work. If you do this. So in that context and in that environment, will unionizing help us or will it make it worse? Zanele, please introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Zanele Mthembu. I'm with Swift, Sisters Working in Film and Television, but I've also come back to this space. Yeah, maybe I'm having second thoughts. But Kanye, I just wanted to actually answer your question and come back to what Muloisi is saying.
Yeah.
Because, and this is what the South African Guild of Actors, right, has been talking about. Because we are freelancers, we do not enjoy the same protections as employees.
Right.
And one of the challenges with being freelancers in terms of the South African law is that we cannot unionize because we are not employees. We are freelancers. So that's something that we all need to be aware of. However, it doesn't stop us from mobilizing. There's nothing that stops us from mobilizing and speaking in the same voice. And while I'm saying this, I am very much cognizant of the fact that we do not all have the same background. Some of us may be in a more comfortable position than others and can afford to maybe be part of however we mobilize, right? Because we're not worried about that fact that I'm going to lose money today or whatever. The reality is that the situation that we face now, as we've had, it has long-term effects. It's not about me not earning money today. It's about how it affects me mentally, emotionally, and therefore how I'm able to function or not function, right? And that is what we have to deal with, that it's beyond affecting us physically or monetarily. It affects us emotionally and mentally to a point where we have tragic situations. So we've got to think about, how am I going to be productive if I am anxious going into that writer's room? How am I going to be, how am I going to perform if I am feeling uncomfortable because this person is treating me in a certain way or is sexually harassing me on set? So we've got to think about our mental and emotional health and make a decision, not for us maybe today, but in terms of how it's going to impact the industry long term and those that are coming behind us. And the reason I'm saying this is that sacrifices have to be made.
Yeah.
We have to make sacrifices, and we come from a society where we have seen how those that have come before us and fought the system of apartheid had to sacrifice so that things can change. At some point, we have to sacrifice. Otherwise, nothing is going to change. If I'm not taking the rate, but Sizwe is taking the rate.
They're going to go with Sizwe.
Exactly. So at some point, we've got to mobilize and work together as industry practitioners and speak in one voice.
And also what's very important, and it comes back to labor processes and the fact that as freelancers, we are not protected. There's a very big issue of people working without contracts. You get hired to do a job. Your contract is continuously coming. When am I getting my contract? When am I going to get my contract? When am I going to get my contract? You're getting paid every month for the job you've been hired to do, but there's no contract. Why? Because then they're not bound to any contractual obligations should they want to release you of your job. So the issue of job insecurity becomes real because without a contract, you have no security. And so you're working with Danki every day. You're working with Danki every day because you have no security that tomorrow you will still have this job. So how do we as freelancers who have no protection under unionization, who have no access to benefits, housing, medical aid, or any other benefits, what is there for us outside of industry bodies? And Katie, I think you had your hand up, and I'd like you to come in here because the issue of the working conditions of professionals is very real. I can give you my mic because, sure, absolutely.
Sorry. What I'm speaking to is the organizations that exist, and I'm picking up on the point that Mulois was talking about. That is the power that we have to change things within the industry, is to belong and be part of the voice, the unified voice that speaks about these issues. Because we can't change anything sitting in our own corners there. We've got to belong. We need, you know, the masses to be able to speak to our issues.
So I hadn't quite finished. Oh, so that's one question, but the next question is look what in the US they have been anti-union for years, and look what the writers' strike did, and look what the actors' strike did. When they banded together, the circumstances and the futures were much more guaranteed. And I'm not sure if we're in that situation because we could be flooded with foreign content. That's another variable that the US doesn't necessarily have. We can be flooded with foreign content very easily, which means that takes away from our job. So we're in a very precarious position in South Africa because we don't have unions. In Canada, oh my God, the Canadians, you can't do nothing, eh? The writers' rates and everybody's rates, it's so different. So we need to find a way to make the difference in our country from a unionized perspective, but also from the mental health perspective.
Thank you very much. I want to now, I've noted your question and your hand. I want to now bring it to those who are in front of the camera. This young lady, she's like, oh no, not me, yes, you. I'd like you to introduce yourself to our room, but I'd also like you to speak from your perspective as an actor who has to work in this environment where there's a lot expected out of you, And sometimes you are not in a position where you can truly speak because there's fear, there's need to work. And I think that this is the platform. It's a safe space. I would like to think this is a safe space. There's no safe. Can you see this fear? Can you see this very reaction that she has is the real reason why we need these platforms. If actors cannot speak because they're so fearful, even in the absence of their production companies, that has to tell you about the level of trauma that they go through. My lady, the floor is yours.
My name is Kaya Gazikula and I'm an actor. Yours is kind. It's not an easy one. When Sis Katie was speaking about mental issues, as an actor, I was reminded of a situation just 2 months ago. A production house reached out to me and said they would like to work with me. They wanted me to come in for screen tasting. I think 5 minutes after that, the lady sends me a message. Oh, I'm so sorry. You are currently on a particular program. Channel has instructed us that you cannot be on another show. I'm like, I finished shooting this show 2 months ago. So I'm sitting at home without a job. And this show will be on air until next year, May. What does that mean? So I'm going to be sitting until I'm off air, you know? And I feel like sometimes channels are not fair when it comes to performers. And also, I feel like their rules change according to who you are. And because you would see a certain actor on different channels. And when it comes to you, you are like, no, she's still on air. And that creates envy. And you question yourself, am I not good enough? What is it about this person that makes them more favorable, you know? And and you look at this person like, I was not acting, but she's, on a serious note.
Noted.
And it's painful being an actor. And also when you get a gig, you have to fight for your rate, you know? And if Landoya unions, I feel like it really needs to be implemented, because you would find ubani and this person is just an influencer. Because I'll try, no, she's 15,000 a call. And here you are, you've been acting since 2008. Kuta, sorry, we've got 5.5 for her. And you're like, how does that work? You know, and that thing of, but we don't speak in the same voice, because a producer is our ikfonele without your agent. Mamela, we want you for this role. We've got 5.5. Whereas the agent you are 10,000 a call. You know, and also producers nazo sometimes they abenzi right izinto. And when you speak for yourself, ibangati you're a troublemaker. Nomlomo omkhulu. This one masingamqashi, you know, and umele into eyiyo at the same time. It's just frustrating. Xa sesebenza esetini ke ngoku, the working conditions, the green room, nihlele green room, nobani by 20 with extras also. And you're like, how does this work? And when you voice out these things, ibangathi ungumntu othanda uthetha, uyamakwa ba next project you're not there, you know.
Let me just come to this point. How does it affect your mental health?
Oh, Sisi, there's a show I recently shot, and every time I would go to set, then bane isisu sam sibane cramps because you don't know what to expect today. There's always something. There's always something. And ndithe xa ndirepa ndiye ndahlala for a good 2 weeks ndingenzi nix ni, because I was not okay mentally, emotionally. Ndiveske ndikhale from nowhere. And I'm like, no, man, ikhona into engakho right. I remember this other time, I even called the producer. I'm like, Sisi, andiyazi kwenzeka ntoni ngeset yakho. And she was like, nam mntanam, ikhona into engakho right ngeset yethu. You know, and also I realized we work with different energies, and that also affects you as a performer. The energies on the floor, because people believe in different things. They perform different rituals before they go to that set. That also influences you as a performer. So you're mentally akumnandanga siswam. I don't want to lie. Anxiety. I didn't even know what anxiety is until I called a friend of mine and I'm like, Chomi, this is what I'm experiencing every time I go to set or kanpume setting. This is what and then he was like, no, it's anxiety. It's because of the environment. I cook clean. It's toxic.
Thank you very much for that. I'd like us to come to the side, and I've noted you, Moloisi. The lady had her hand up, not the side.
Hi there. My name is Swangele. I'm a freelancer. I'm a marketer. I think for me, first of all, let's commend Nfvf for the session.
Absolutely.
Because I think as a custodian, and I'm going to call them a custodian of the industry, they have the power to identify the stakeholders. And in the room, there's different stakeholders with different needs. And that's what we were talking about, that people have got different interests, different priorities, and we might all sit here and talk, but when we go out, your paycheck and you're feeding your kids is a priority.
Absolutely.
But I think an organization like Nfvf can then do this more frequently, quarterly, but also segment the market and the stakeholders and try and understand which from the industry perspective, but also from a broadcaster's perspective. I gave an example. I'd like to do a comparison between Netflix and SABC rates, just as an ad, and just almost standardize where there's basic minimum best practice, so that over time it becomes a habit, and we treat the industry as a business, because I think this is people's livelihoods. Everyone wakes up in the morning to make money and to work in a happy environment, and I would just encourage them to lead the industry as a custodian.
Now, as custodians, just coming up, I've noted you, my brother, as custodians and people who've conducted extensive research over the years, I'd also like to hear from you guys, what are some of the other topics that you think the Nfvf needs to start going into in terms of research? Because they've researched about gender issues, they've researched about the economic impact assessment, they've researched about race, what do they need to research next, so that we are having research that is relevant to the industry, that we take it back to industry and it's relevant? I think those are the questions that I'd like you guys to answer. Just given the discussion that we are having today, what are some of those things that you guys are saying, Nfvf, look at this? To the corner. My brother, also please do introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is AB. I'm a producer and a clinical therapist. What a combination. Nfvf, I think if we can look into mental health, there's a huge distinction between mental health and mental illness. We all have mental health. We don't all have mental illness.
Right.
We need to get that. There's a lot of health literacy in our society, but we do need more trauma-informed productions, more trauma-informed directors, more trauma-informed producers, more trauma-informed writers. However, to answer your question, I would suggest Nfvf to look into the mental health research a tiny bit more, because we are losing a generation of entertainers at a lightning speed. But I don't think mental health is an entertainment thing. It's a humanity thing.
Right.
I just think because we are in the industry in terms of being under a microscope constantly, that the visibility is there to a certain extent. But mental health would be my primarily answer to dig a tiny bit deeper into it. And of course, some of the obvious issues are underpay and all of that, but it goes a tiny bit deeper than that. You know, not a lot of productions are culturally informed and trauma informed. Like I just said, like she said, there's people doing different rituals before they go onto set. Now, as a Christian, that might also affect my performance on set. And as a producer, I'm definitely going to sit on your head if you don't know your lines, because especially times like this, we need to wrap up the year. I just came from Society Studios. There's 3 productions currently forming. It's quiet, it's silenced. Now, that to me is another devastating thing. My question right now is, where's the crew of Sea of the Lion going to be doing, you know, without a job right now? Let's look in all of those post-traumatic stresses that we spoke about earlier, that Siskatiwe spoke about. So mental health is one of the topics I would like Nfvf to look into.
Absolutely, very important. I've noted your hand, my brother. Will I see a quick one?
How you say quick, but it is going to be quick. Thank you. I just wanted to go back to the research presentation. I made some notes. I was just scribbling away, some I can't see. Thank you, Nfvf, for the work you do. We don't always say that. Many years ago, I got a film school accredited in Limpopo. I think 12 years ago, whatever. We didn't have rent at some point and we couldn't pay people, and Nfvf came through and funded. We see these things. I'm currently processing a documentary that Nfvf funded last year. So thank you. You mentioned that 423, you had 423 respondents, and you mentioned the challenges around gathering research. And I just thought of something. So when we come to praxis, when it's time to ask for money, would it not help if there was a little tab included there where it doesn't have to be a comprehensive, like 100 questions, but because we industry and we have the information, wouldn't that help? I mean, not that you have to be forced to complete a questionnaire to get funding, not like that, but just you know what I mean? Just a little 10 questions before you validate and submit your thoughts on this, because then you're getting quality information that doesn't always come through when you have this. It's just a thought I had. Sorry, I'll be quick. I'm trying to find the other one. I'm a television person, and I always struggle with the T in NFV, in the V in the Nfvf. I've always struggled. I'm a video entertainment producer, among other things, and it's great as a country to focus on film, because we have to look at, you know, the commercialization of what you do. But I feel like so many television, video entertainment, broadcast practitioners have always been excluded. You see that even when you apply, for example, for the first time, those tiers do not speak to television. They ask you, how many films have you produced? How many documentaries have you made? Then you're sitting with, I've got over 23 years of producing television. But when I come to Nfvf, you start doubting yourself. It's like you don't have the required experience. I think if we can just, it would be nice to see the Nfvf logo on television. I mean, that's what we do. It's just, yeah, the V in Nfvf. The last one.
I think she's advocating for NFT.
No, V is the relevant one, but we're not represented. We're more film, but not everybody is making film, or not everybody wants to create films.
Yeah.
The last 2 quick ones. I've also sat on training panels for like 6 years or whatever at the Nfvf. And what has always bothered me, and again, I'm speaking to skills now in development. How do you know that people that apply for bursaries are not lying to you? It's always bothered me, because when we evaluate financial need, we say, if your parents are not employed, just submit an affidavit, and you go to the police station, you have a chat, and you say, just confirming that my dad is unemployed or is not present in my life. I know so many people that Nfvf continues to fund, but also financial situations change. You might fund someone next year in 2025, the mom gets a promotion, but we don't monitor that.
Yeah.
It's just a concern that, and the last one, I promise the last one. You spend so much money, which is great, on training initiatives, those 350 grants, but they're not being carefully monitored. So the fact that someone says, I've got an MICT CETA accredited certificate, I've always wondered how you monitoring the quality of training that you're funding. You're spending so much money there, but people just go and say, I've got a venue, pack 20 kids in a hall, and they do what you know requires a year to complete. They do it in 2 months and they get the money. It's just part of what I saw earlier, but you guys are doing well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We are headed towards our wrap up, but I'm going to take 1 or 2 more questions from the floor. My brother noted you.
Hi, my name is Jelezo. I am a podcaster, filmmaker, and I also do run multiple festivals. My in terms of the research things which I would want to be looked into more, are specifically 2 areas. Specifically, one, the digital sector and what the pipeline between what is happening within the digital space from independent and filmmakers who do not know that they're filmmakers coming into the industry, and how we're actually, is there development happening within that space? I say this because of the world over, actually, I've just grown up. I'm still in my 20s. My entire existence has been very much both digital and filmmaking. But when you look at international film festivals and you look at the very young voices across the world and big markets that are really making a name for themselves, they came from digital. If you look at, for example, right now, the biggest film festival movie is an Australian film called Talk to Me. And the filmmakers from that program, for the filmmakers who did that, were YouTubers who at the time, Australia then made a program to try and essentially instill and upskill YouTube filmmakers to become filmmakers over the course of 10 years. And over the last 3 to 4 years, a majority of the really big festival hits that have come from Australia have come from people from that program, because there are a lot of digital filmmakers who are very proactive, making films right now from whether they're 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, and actually working within filmmaking without knowing that they were doing the art of filmmaking. So outside of the actual web series funding, how are we trying, what research and work is being put into actually trying to make those filmmakers a little bit more be able to work within the traditional sense? The second one would then also be, again, on the marketing end. What from a marketing position, because we are, I think there was a report in 2018 that was saying that our industry, to your point, is very television based, but not just very television based, it's very commission based. So for most producers, your understanding of film production is to make a product, and very rarely it actually, the marketing end of it is part of what it is that you need to do. So when you then become a filmmaker making films, the marketing end of it is something which you don't actually really pay that much attention to. You learn the first time you do it. So as a country that is, as a country which has a lot of success with our films, what narratives and what spaces are we creating that are actually marketing our films that aren't necessarily film festivals? Because film festivals are very physical focused and we need them, but what narratives and what spaces are being made to tell the stories of the films? 2 weeks ago, Triggerfish won an international Emmy for work that they've done, but very few people actually know that that Emmy actually exists. When filmmakers have their products done outside of the actual news programs, where are we making narratives about film? Because the narratives we make about film is really what sells films to audiences. You watch Variety, you watch a lot of these different spaces that are curated for film and television. And I feel like that is a space where we need to start developing a little bit more in terms of not just making the films and screening them, but the narratives we make of them.
Thank you. I'm going to take the last question. People are hitting up. All right. Just before you start, let me do a count. 1, 2. Now all the hands went up at the same time. All right, so I'm gonna take, because you haven't spoken, ma'am, I'm gonna give you 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's be fair. 1, 2, 3, 4. Susanella, you have a question? You have a comment? Ketiwe? No. Okay, great. I'm gonna start with you. In fact, I'll take these two together because they're in the same table. Then I'll come here and then that table. Go for it, my brother.
Okay, mine is not much of a question. I might have a question along the way, but talking about the problems that we have in the industry, I mean, Sizwe mentioned that as artists, we're not united, and there's been other problems that have been highlighted. I think the major problem is our government, because where does the money come from? I mean, the money that Nfvf is distributing is from the government, right? How much is the government giving us to make films? Nothing. It's close to nothing. So, I mean, I did a research on the limits of self-expression for South African filmmakers, and my focus was on Black filmmakers. It's an academic research that I'm still working on, almost done with it. And I found that it keeps going back to the government. And one of my participants even mentioned that, which is true, that Hollywood, like 100 years ago, when they started making films, the government decided, we're going to use you guys, we're going to use the artists, we're going to use the filmmakers to market the nation, to market America. South Africa is not doing that. Even though, okay, I understand filmmaking came through Americans, but South Africa is losing an opportunity as a nation to market itself. From time to time, we talk about, I know now even the tourism department is trying to partner with the filmmakers. But what I'm trying to stress here is the problem comes from the top. It comes from the government. They don't value the actors. They don't value the creatives. There is no value and an investment that they are prepared to put into this sector. Look at the kind of ministers that they choose. You first become a minister of police, then you become a minister of arts. It's been a pattern.
Right.
We are not taken seriously. So if we're talking about unionizing, for example, it's okay and well and good and sweet and beautiful, but we're just going to be soundboards. We're just going to be making noise, and no one is going to be listening to us until we look like fools. We need to think out of the box. We need to find a way of changing this whole problem.
Thank you very much. My sister, please sharp shot to the point.
All right, I'm Nwabisa Machumza, and I'm a content strategist. I work largely with channels and broadcasters. And whenever I come to events like these, the biggest thing that I always find is missing are the broadcasters. Producers love speaking to producers. Creators love speaking together, right? And you don't find the actual decision makers in the room. She complained, she's an actress, she complained about the producers.
Actor, we don't have actress anymore.
Okay, actor, sorry. But this producer is under pressure from Channel, and Channel is under pressure from a content strategist who does not understand production, right? The content strategist says that this show is running for, I don't know, 13 weeks. When I have a break in between these shows, my revenue goes down. So I do not want to break between these shows, right? I need to run back to back because my revenues are going to go down. But in rooms like these, if we don't then include the broadcasters, the content strategists, Channel always gets the flack, but they're reporting to someone else, right? Those are the people that we need to engage with. It is not government that's going to change the policy because they don't see our actors as employees. It is the content strategist that says you cannot do a back-to-back because of the pressure that you're sending down the value chain. So I'm challenging Nfvf to have research that looks at the relationship between our broadcasters, your DSTVs, your Netflix, and the producers. That is a very big missing gap.
Very important one. And we're going to move to the sister here at the back. Kindly introduce yourself as well, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mparama Tutu. I am a scriptwriter and producer. I want to touch on distribution. I feel like as a tier 2 filmmaker, we struggle a lot with distribution or getting a distribution deal. It's very not easy, but it's easy to get a contract from Nfvf, KZN, or GFC, but to lock out the whole deal or to lock finance is always very challenging to get the right deal for the right kind of content that we're trying to create. So there's something that the Nfvf does from time to time that I really like, and I would like to encourage it, or maybe if we could look more into it, where they go to the streamers and the broadcasters and get like a slate deals where people can just apply with different kind of content, because with streamers is very challenging. They want a certain kind of content at a certain time, and you go there with your kind of content or genres that they say for this period we're not looking for that. So what do you do? So I would like to say maybe we can look at into creating more slates, negotiate with SABC for instance, where they come to party and the SABC come to the party, and get like a good funding model where we can encourage more, especially emerging filmmakers, where it's very challenging to get your foot on the door, especially negotiating those distribution deals. Otherwise, we're going to end up with certain kind of filmmakers who get all the deals across channels, and the rest of us are always going to forever be emerging. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Over to your neighbors. Okay.
I'm actually answering the question you asked earlier about
Sure.
the research focus. I spoke to Butze briefly about this, and I've over the years spoken to a few Nfvf managers about it as well. In my other world, I wear the hat of documentary festival director. And over the years, we've seen less and less films from Black women, documentaries. And I really would like the Nfvf to consider doing research into this area. I think that there's a huge gap of films by documentary films by Black women. And that is actually against the trend that is happening on the continent, where on the rest of the continent, there's more and more documentary films by Black women coming through. We are seeing it through our submissions. And even at one of the biggest festivals in FESPACO, there was a lot of African women that are coming up with films that are traveling and films that are getting critically acclaimed. So I think there's something wrong with what is happening between the period Black women are going to film schools, graduating, and where they get lost and why they get lost. And maybe it would be interesting to see those that have gone on to other industries, why have they moved on to other industries? And why is it difficult for, I think specifically Black women, because that is it's a huge gap. Why they don't stay in the industry and why they are not able to make like feature length quality documentaries, because we are getting huge numbers in short films and some of the programs from the Nfvf slates, but I see the trend is not the same in fiction, where there's a lot of strong films coming from Black women, but it's not the same in documentary. And it's been a downward trend since the 10 years that I've been involved with the festival.
And for those who don't know, I'm the co-chairperson of the Documentary Filmmakers Association. And I think that this is perhaps something that we can all partner on to look at, because we are the custodians of I wouldn't say the custodians, but the umbrella under which documentary filmmakers come and hide themselves and find community. And it's an alarming statistic that you're bringing to us, because I have to be honest, I wasn't aware that maybe there's just one of me that's submitting and that there's less and less of us. So the question, is it a funding issue? Is it we don't know that they exist, but they're out there? Or is it a case of they don't know where the platforms are to submit their work? So we actually need to understand what is causing the downward trend. So thank you for bringing that forward. I think I'm definitely also going to take it up with the board.
Thank you. My name is Ben Chiba and I'm a struggling artist. So What I have is just a thought that I had, and this would be more maybe directed to Mandisa and KTO and the guy, the clinical psychologist. That's what you said you do, right? Yeah. You don't have to answer, but maybe a discussion, because this goes back to the whole toxic environment, like a place that's not good to work in. So I was thinking that, okay, an organization fails because of the people at the top. Like when there's crap down there, it filters down and then it affects everyone. So instead of just focusing on the people beneath, how about we actually tackle those guys up there and be like, oi, what can we do to help you so that the environment that you're setting up is a good one? Because they're also human. Because we're sitting here, we're making it as if the producers and the people and the broadcasters are machines, but they're also humans. They also have their own mental issues. So I was just thinking, like, what if maybe we get to them and then they can pass down the whole thing down to the crew, to everyone that's there? Because I was involved in a project where a director was doing a film and he wanted actors. So he would say, okay, this person is good, but how is it to work with them? He didn't want to work with people that would cause trouble. Like, I don't want any divas. I don't care how big the CV is, whatever. I just want good people, because we're making a film. I just needed to be a good environment. So it starts from him setting up the whole thing. So that's what I was thinking, is like, how about we actually get to those guys and be like, oi, what can we do to help them? And then they can influence everything below. Because I mean, if we're all in trouble and we're always complaining, the guy at the top, he got his own issues and no one is talking to him. So it's just something that I thought that maybe look into that.
She asked a very important question. What is a diva?
What is a diva? Who asked?
She asked. A diva is an influencer.
There we go. Yeah, it's what Jerry doesn't want.
There you
Jerry
go. That's a
Bufuke,
diva.
yeah.
Thank you very much, Caesar.
Okay, two things. With the whole notion of the Nfvf issuing bursaries, I think the area of focus, especially since we're discussing how in South Africa we do not necessarily have a framework of marketing and distribution in tertiary institutions, it would be nice for the Nfvf to actually make a call out to say that we want to fund institutions that will initiate this kind of curriculum, because it's something that's needed. That's the business aspect of, you know, the film industry. So it would be great for them to say, let's say maybe they get 500,000 or 1 million, and they say that we are issuing 10 bursaries of 100,000 each for marketing and distributions, because then it will also direct the tertiary institutions which have divisions of film schools to actually create or to be geared towards marketing and distribution, because I have not seen it anywhere in the country. And then secondly, also, I would like to encourage the Nfvf to advocate towards us being an industry where we are recognized as laborers, so that the Department of Labor, I know that it's a policy thing and whatnot, but can they please drive that narrative so that it can become better for us? Because, you know, for as long as we are seen as freelancers, people that can easily be gotten rid of, there is no regulation whatsoever, things will not change. We'll always be having such platforms where we are venting and venting, but we also want a way forward. So the Nfvf is the driver, and I do know that it's an agency of the government, and most of the money, if not all of it, comes from the government, meaning that they are also government, but I think they are more in touch with us as artists, and that's why we are here today. Please try and drive that narrative. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And Sisanele, you are officially my last person before I hand over to the Nfvf for their response to all the questions and suggestions and you know, the brilliant suggestions that have come out today. Sisanele?
You know, there's one thing have been thinking about is that and this is a request to the Nfvf, because we're talking about what additional research can be done. We, as the Nfvf, I'm sure you're sitting on a lot of data that's there already, and that could potentially answer a lot of the questions that were asked here. For instance, in terms of rates, right? we submit, or producers submit a lot of information to the Nfvf, and it's sitting there. So we need to mine that data to be able to answer the questions that are being raised here. A few years ago, we were able, the Nfvf was able to assist in producing a booklet that demonstrated funding for different people within the country, the serial funded, people that are serially funded, for instance, because they were complaining about the Nfvf and the work that the Nfvf is not doing, right? But by producing that booklet, we were able to see actually who has been funded by the Nfvf over the years and how much they have been funded. And that helped to silence a lot of people because the booklet is there. I have it in my house and I know how many people have been funded. So I'm saying the Nfvf, the challenge to Nfvf is that we are submitting documents after documents after documents. What is that information being used for? It needs to be mined so that we can answer questions about real transformation where we don't have to go back to people and ask them to answer a survey when that information is sitting at the Nfvf to see how much transformation is really happening within the industry. How are the rates within the industry? Who's being paid what? So that's my challenge to the Nfvf, is to mine the data that they're using. And it's not just for the Nfvf. The Nfvf has collaborations with the IDC. They have the Emerging Black Filmmaker Slate, for instance. It's between the IDC, the Nfvf, as well as Department of Trade, Industry and Corporation, right? And Competition, sorry. So the Nfvf can play a part in getting that information so that we can see whether these numbers are changing and who are they changing for. Because real transformation is economic transformation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Onke, or you're going to give her the mic to give us right of reply, or you know how they do in weddings when the bride and the groom respond at the end. She's going to give us the last response to everyone. Onke, over to you.
Thank you for enjoying this wonderful day with us, with our friends and family, bride and groom. So I think firstly, I just want to say thank you for the thorough engagement. I think we really appreciate it. I think it was the first time we were doing something like this, so we were a bit nervous. But you guys really came out and, you know, responded to the very objective of this event. So I'm sure Butse shares the same sentiments. The research that we've done, it's been quite a lot that has been done over the years, and which she's managed so well since the time that I'd started at Nfvf in 2021. But your camera does not like me. So, but what I wanted to, so I think off the bat, I think that's very important, because you can't take engagement for, especially honest engagement, you can't take it for granted. I think earlier Kanye was talking about how, you know, you'll get people in the room and they'll be afraid to speak up because of whoever else might be there. I think she was saying it to the actress as well. So for people to be honest and say, first of all, answer the question, this is the research you can look into, but then also to give some of their experiences, which are very personal around their own health mentally, is something that we don't take for granted. So thank you very much. And also to the Izimbali Wellness team for being patient with us since 2021. We really appreciate it, and we really hope that this can produce something fruitful. So just in terms of some of the questions that were asked, I'll start with your ones. So in terms of praxis with the questionnaire, it's something that we can build into the system. It would just be dependent on what exactly we're asking, right? So the questioning would have to be directed. When we do research, industry research, we always commission it through a research institution that has the resources and has the capacity to conduct proper research, right? To really do a proper job. And oftentimes we give them access to the information of the people that have applied for funding, people that have been awarded funding, just so that they have access to the pool of recipients that we are dealing with. So back then, things like Poppy didn't exist, but obviously we have to take them into account now, where before you would share that information, people have to, right, be given the option to opt out. So thank you. So that is possible, but I do want to assure you that the way that the industry research is done, first of all, it doesn't take we don't turn this over 2 weeks. You know, Wutsa can attest to it. It takes her time, right, to make sure that this research is proper qualitative research. Even the quantitative one is qualitative. It's not something that you would just throw out and say, okay, but this sample size doesn't make sense. These responses don't make sense. It takes time. It costs a lot of money, but it's worth it in the end. You would rather spend those months and that amount of money doing a proper job, which is why we're partnering with them for a bit of phase 1, but more extensively for phase 2, for the broader research, which will respond to what the gentleman was talking about earlier, which is why we're going to do that, right? And do a proper process that will produce that. So you can do those things on praxis, but you have to be directive in your questioning. And also be careful because, you know, people understand praxis for them to be applying for funding. So sometimes it could disjoint someone to be like, okay, why are they asking me these questions? But obviously you could qualify that, right? Then in terms of the bursaries, so our Nfvf funding policy is quite clear to say that we look at students whose caretakers, parents, you know, are earning a certain amount annually. So I think on the current Nfvf policy, it's 600,000, right? So if you live in a household where that is the annual income or less, right? That is what then opens you up to the opportunity to get a bursary. So that is quantified. So the bursary program is not just something that is done for whoever applies. I mean, there was a council meeting yesterday where they were approving some of the bursary applicants. Over 600 people applied. And the only number that we have a budget for this financial year is 26. So there needs to be appreciation for the fact that 26, you can't just pull it out of a hat. There's a compliance process when people apply where everything is checked. The income of the household, there's a needs feasibility. Do you absolutely need this bursary, or can it go to another kid who needs it more, right? Are you sitting in a situation where you could potentially get it from elsewhere? And before we did the bursaries, before 2022, it was full tuition only. And now for first year students, you can get a contribution towards accommodation, towards meals, towards transports, transport, towards all of those things that often are the stopgap for quite a number of kids who are in really dire situations. So you get the bursary, you have the marks, but you don't have money to get on a bus from Limpopo to Johannesburg, where you're doing your course at Wits, whatever, at Wits Drama School or whatever the case is, right? So there is quite a rigorous process that's done between the time when the call is taken out to when the applications are reviewed and vetted for compliance, to when the people then have to, that we appoint will review the applications for the bursaries. Then you have the council meetings, you have the panel meetings where they have to discuss it, you have the council meeting where they have to approve it. It's quite a rigorous process. So there definitely is that attention to detail when it comes to bursaries that are awarded. For national bursaries, for international bursaries, it's even more difficult because the interest rate is not our best friend. Every second day there's a war. that affects the rand, but it doesn't necessarily mean that our ability to fund international bursaries, which are expensive, that it increases at the rate at which it should. In terms of TV, we are the National Film and Video Foundation, National Film and Video Foundation, as per the Nfvf Act of 1997. So we do fund TV projects. We fund pilots. We cannot fund telenovelas. We cannot fund TV series, because if we fund those, then there will be absolutely no funding for film. So, and you can also appreciate that in this environment, a lot of people that are filmmakers intermittently will work on TV sets, because that's where the bulk of the work is coming from. But if you now, as the Nfvf, apportion the bulk of your budget towards TV projects, filmmakers will literally have nowhere to go to apart from the commissions. So in an ideal world, we would be able to fund TV series, reality shows to their full capacity. But what we can do is give you funding so that you can create a pilot. And then once you get that project off the ground with the broadcaster, then you can continue, because at least there's more support from a television perspective. There is, let's be honest. From a film perspective, there really isn't. In other markets, you have your actual theaters who also would provide funding, the actual distributors, the theaters, the traditional theaters. You don't have that in South Africa. They just want you to give them the product. So currently, with the focus of our content being on film, documentaries, animation, where even though we fund quite extensively, we cannot even fund to the extent that we want. So I think our cap for feature films is 3 or 3.5 million. Yolanda can correct me. But honestly speaking, we should probably be giving at least a cap of 10 million for a feature film, if we're being honest. But we can't. So if our annual budget is 150 million, in an ideal world, that should be what you can give one blockbuster South African film. In an ideal world. If you think about the actual cost of creating films, if you compare it to like markets that are doing it well. So we might not be doing a perfect job at it, but over the years that the Nfvf has been in existence, it's really been the most consistent form of support for filmmakers who won't necessarily get the same support at broadcasters as people creating TV content will. And then in terms of M&E, we have a monitoring and evaluation office. Currently, it's occupied by one person who's the manager, who's supported by a coordinator. And it's not necessarily as big as we'd want it to be. However, we have different ways in which that functions in terms of an M&E perspective. I mean, for example, for PSP, we have an entire support team. They don't necessarily work within Nfvf, but they are an extended arm of us. And they, through all of the grants that we've provided for PSP, they implement weekly M&E meetings with the beneficiaries, weekly on-site meetings with the beneficiaries, so that whatever data is captured through Praxis in terms of any of the jobs created, how many women were employed, how many men were employed, how many Black people, colored people employed, that information is accurate, that data is accurate. So it's a system that we're still trying to get to a point of it being a lot more labor intensive, right? So yeah, I think those were the major questions. And then some were just comments for things that we can look into. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so, so much. You know, sometimes you take a chance, you take a risk, and you don't know if it's going to pay off. And I think this is something that has paid off for the Nfvf. This session is the first of its kind that they've ever done. And I'm definitely sure that they're going to continue with such sessions, because there's more research that's still going to come from this room. Suggestions that were made in this room will inform future research that we will see in another year or two, and the basis of it will be what came out of this think tank. This is actually how I see this. I see this as a think tank and not just people attending an event. So please, a round of applause for yourselves. And for bringing just such amazing perspectives and such great suggestions and comments that I feel, in fact, I know are going to shape the future of our industry. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, our event is officially over. Thank you so much for being an awesome audience. Absolutely. There's lunch being served. We can go and dish outside and come back and eat. And we also do have entertainment that's going to lead us into the rest of the afternoon. Please do network with each other, share contacts, share opportunities to work with each other. We'd really love to see great initiatives coming out of this project. Lunch is served. Thank you so much. Thank you from me.